Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I'm going to call the Village of New Glarus Board meeting to order. Lynn, would you do the roll call, please?
Sure. Michael Bell,
Present.
Mike Gancher,
Here.
Ricky Cruz.
Present.
Yes.
Yes.
Tammy Newberry,
I'm here.
Chuck Phillipson,
Here.
Roger Trutman,
Here.
Lori Wertz.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a quorum. Item 2, I'd look for approval of the agenda.
This is Tammy. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Michael Bell will second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, public appearances and citizens' comments. No debate will occur with the board on items introduced by citizens. Items will not be acted upon at this meeting, but will be referred to the proper staff or committee if action is required. And please keep comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to approval of the consent agenda.
This is Tammy. I'll move for approval of consent agenda.
Gansert, Mike, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, new board business. Consideration, discussion, approval of 2021 insurance coverages.
I'm gonna turn this over to our representative from M3, Monica. She'll take us through a brief presentation on some of the proposed additional coverages and an overview of our coverages. Monica?
Hey, thank you, Drake. Thank you, everybody, for having me. My name is Monica Schrammel. I am your account executive with M3 Insurance. I work in our education and government practice group. I thought I would give you just a brief introduction about M3 Insurance and also EMC Insurance before we go through the summary of insurance that was provided in your packet, and then the recommendations that we're putting forth regarding cyber insurance. So M3 Insurance is based out of Madison, Wisconsin. We do have 6 offices throughout Wisconsin. We are a privately held company with 42 shareholders. We also have 1 office in Rockford, Illinois. We have a practice group that is dedicated to public entities. We work with hundreds of schools and municipalities throughout the state. Ted Hayes, our senior risk manager, has over 30 years experience working specifically with public entities in the risk management space. Your insurance program is with EMC Insurance Company. EMC is an A-rated carrier by AM Best. They insure thousands of public entities throughout Wisconsin and beyond. As your broker, we know budgets are tight, especially this year, but always. So we keep a close eye on the market, the insurance marketplace, and we review options for you annually. The uptick in civil unrest in 2020, along with continuing property losses, are driving up rates across the country. And I kind of forgot about this until I was preparing for today. But in August of 2020, there was something called a derecho that went through Iowa with all the attention on so many other things. Many of us forgot all about that, but that was the single largest property claim or incident for property claims that many of our companies experience that are heavy in the Iowa area, including EMC Insurance, which is your insurance company. So I provided a summary of your insurance, but before I go into that, does anybody want me to expound further on M3 Insurance or on EMC Insurance? No? Okay. Please feel free to interrupt me at any time if you need additional information. But what I thought I would do is just quickly go through the summary without boring you with all the details, but making sure that I give you an opportunity to ask questions if you have them. The insurance program that we have for you it consists of property insurance, inland marine, which is the word we use for equipment. General liability includes your police, professional liability, also errors and omissions, automobile, workers' compensation, umbrella liability, crime insurance, and also cyber liability. So those are the types of insurance that are currently provided by your insurance program through EMC. And then with a summary, we've provided the details of that. You can look through the property to see the listings there and the list of equipment. Any questions that you might have, I'd be happy to answer those. This policy does also include the police professional liability, your general liability, the auto, and the workers' comp. I wanted to pause a little bit on the workers' compensation just to address what an awesome job the village is doing on the workers' compensation. If you're looking at that page, you'll see a number 0.75 is the experience mod factor. That means the village of New Glarus is 25% better than your peers. And that is other municipalities within the state of Wisconsin. So pat yourselves on the back for doing an awesome job and keep up the great work there. The rates are determined by the state, and those have changed just a little bit. Where we would expect, the police rate did go up this year. Otherwise, they've all stayed pretty steady. We will know what the rates for 2022 will be in October, so we can always give you a heads up on what the next year looks like. Generally speaking, we expect the rates to continue to go down, except perhaps in the police area.
Monica, Mike
Yes.
here.
Yes.
Just kind of caught my eye and I'm wondering about it. Inland marine,
Yes. Would you like me to explain what that is?
please?
Yeah. So I apologize. The insurance industry uses some terms that are from the olden days, and inland marine is an example of one of those. It really means anything that's not at a set location. So we use the term for equipment that might be moving from one location to another. It's not vehicles, but it's also not property that is set at one spot. So inland marine basically means things that could be moving around from location to location. They tend to have a little bit higher rate than what you might see on property, simply because it's the kind of stuff that's not inside and protected inside. So it might be exposed to more types of claims just by its nature.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I'm sorry, but what would be an example of that? I'm kind of confused.
On the inland marine?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's provided in the summary. It's page 6. It's the plows, it's the spreaders, it's the compressors, the chippers, loaders. Looks like there's sewer cleaning equipment, snow blowers, equipment like that.
Okay,
also
so it's
can-
stuff that attaches to the vehicles, basically. Okay.
Yeah, and it also can be, we have coverage for if you lease or rent equipment from another party. Often they'll require that you provide some kind of insurance, and that would be included on the inland marine.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Let's see. I was talking about the workers' compensation, and then in your packet, I did want to point out again, because you are doing so well on keeping your employees safe, you have an 18% flat dividend, and that has stayed the same. That's a tool that insurance companies use to be more competitive in the Wisconsin marketplace, because the rates are set by the state. Every insurance company has to charge the same amount, and in the dividend, there's a little bit flexibility. So we are happy that we are able to keep you at an 18% flat dividend. So that's basically money that comes back to you after the audit happens. On the umbrella, you have a $1 million umbrella that goes over on top of your general liability as well as your auto liability. And that includes the police professional and the errors and omissions. So that's an additional $1 million of coverage over and above the liability that you have. Any questions before I move into the cyber insurance? Okay. So the next page in the summary talks about cyber liability. You currently have cyber liability as part of your EMC package policy. What I'd like to point out to you there is that if you have the summary in front of you, there are two things that we put in bold specifically for you. And the reason that we put those in bold is because that's the area that we are seeing a significant increase in claims on cyber insurance. And that is cyber extortion. And I apologize, cyber insurance, some of the terminology is different from company to company. So I'll try to make sure that I stay consistent with that. But cyber extortion, if you see it in the news, comes up as ransomware. I hope that you're somewhat familiar with that, but basically a hacker gets into your system and locks down all your data. Now, public entities have always kind of been a target, but they were really a target in 2020. And maybe you have talked about this with other municipalities, but with the civil unrest, it's added to this because some people are just angry. They're angry right now and they're targeting their local governments and locking down their systems. Even sometimes it's just for spite, but they are asking for a ransom. So basically they hold your data hostage and they demand ransom. In 2017, the average amount of a claim under this coverage was $15,000. In 2018, it was $47,000. 2019 was the most recent data I could find, but it went to $175,000. So that is a huge jump. And my concern for you is not only that you're somewhat of a target as a government entity, and your limit is at 10,000. So that motivated me to look at the market to see what I could find for you that could give you better coverage on the cyber. The other item that's in bold is the misdirected payment fund. I don't know if you've heard about any of these types of claims, but these are the types of claims where a vendor will, or a hacker will pose as a vendor, say, hi, I'm Monica from XYZ contracting company. I've changed my banking information. I know you owe me $100,000 or whatever the dollar might be. Send it to this bank account. We highly recommend, and I know I'm pretty sure that you do this, that you have controls in place that you're calling and checking on that. But that's called social engineering, where you as an entity give up money or willingly pay because someone has deceived you into thinking that they are someone who you owe money to. And that one has a number of different names, but misdirected payment fund. And right now with your policy with EMC, it's only $5,000. I don't have an average number for you, but I can tell you that we've seen claims like that in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that tends to be when there's a construction project going on or something that is in that people would be aware of, and so they know that you're going to have large funds being transferred from your account to a contractor. Let me just pause there because that was a lot of information. It's really important. Does anybody want me to expound on that or have any questions?
This is Peggy. I do have a question. Is the amount that you're insured for determined by the size of your community or the location?
The amount that you're insured for, do you mean the limit of insurance that I've shown here?
Mm-hmm.
No, it is not. With cyber insurance, it's been developing, and this policy that you have is kind of EMC's solution to make sure that their clients had cyber coverage of some kind. They are not a specific cyber insurance company. It's more of a throw-in coverage. And because these two areas fall under their sub-limits, those are the smaller limits that they offer. The next 2 pages in the summary will show you what I'm recommending, and that is to go to a true full cyber policy. And then those limits would be more in line with the full limit of insurance that you buy. So the EMC is 50,000 is the full limit. And then those are sub limits underneath that with the EMC policy. Does that help?
Yes, thanks.
Okay.
Yes, it does. I guess my other question would be is, with Lynn and Drake, I would imagine that we have kind of an idea, or maybe because we're smaller, we do have a better idea of who our people are that we owe money to. So like with the compensation insurance, if we have better practices in place, can we get better rates, or is that something that's kind of maybe not developed enough yet as the cyber world goes on?
No, that's a great question, and that's absolutely the case. So when the underwriters look at it with cyber, they kind of do an overall analysis because they're providing also the privacy liability, which the privacy liability can depend on what kind of information you have. And as a government entity, you probably have some private information for quite a few people. So they take into account your system controls that are in place altogether. Not necessarily specific to your procedures as far as payments go.
Okay.
But I would agree that, you know, the awareness is the main thing. We saw these claims, you know, people just weren't aware. And sometimes it was a payroll request, like change my payroll banking to whatever. So as people went from paper to electronic, or HR departments went from paper to electronic,
Sure.
they hadn't put those controls in place yet. But most people, you know, now have more controls for that.
So this is I mean, I think we all are pretty much aware that the fact that the cybersecurity thing is developing and that they are coming up with new ways, but as time goes on, we'll also be coming up with new contraries, but we have to do is keep up with it, or keep ahead of it insurance wise, is what you're trying to explain to us.
Yes.
Test. Test, can you hear me?
I just add that, you know, while we're small and we generally would check if we get something like that on a payroll request or something, it usually clicks to us right away, like this is strange, but we have gotten them. You know, we get them actually quite regularly where we're getting an email requesting money be sent or contact us, that kind of thing. So it's happening.
And knowing that, Lynn, I'm not quite as concerned on the misdirected payment limit as I am on the extortion. The extortion, there's really only so much you can do to control for that.
Test 1, 2.
Any other questions on? Okay.
So I'm kind of looking at this name malware up at the data compromise aspect, and trying to compare that with the cyber extortion. I understand how you're stating cyber extortion is that they're putting in ransomware, which is a type of malware that's taking over your system, and just it's like a passcode. You have to have that passcode to get access to your computer. But it seems like it's the same thing. It's just the intent is the only thing that's different.
Mike, I would be happy to provide more insurance language for you if you would like. I can do that. You're right, it does sound similar, but it is different in that with ransomware or with the cyber extortion, you're paying a ransom. So I think that might be the difference. Something with the malware is probably more specific to the damage it's done to your system and what you have to do to fix that, where the
Test 1, 2,
ransomware,
3,
excuse
3,
me, the
2, 1,
cyber
test.
extortion actually includes language for paying the ransom if that's how it's settled. Does that help?
Yeah, I understand. I'm just not 100% agreeing with everything, but
Okay, well, I can certainly provide additional language if you want the policy language on and how that breaks down.
right.
Say, my name's Bert with the police department, and I have a question. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I had a audio problem here before. But my question is, when I sat and I listened through the early part of this, and you said the police department rate had increased this year. I guess my question is, was there anything specific within the police department that we had control that caused that? Or is it, I'm assuming, a nationwide problem based on the state of this United States right now?
Right. If you're referring to my comments about the workers' compensation rate, so the workers' compensation is state specific. So the state of Wisconsin uses Wisconsin data throughout the state for all police departments or for any payroll that's put into that code and their claims. And so that rate is based off of statewide experience, not yours specifically. And that 0.75 that I referenced with the experience modification means that as a whole, the village is 25% better than your peers, than other municipalities throughout the state.
Right, and I understood that, but I thought at some other point in time you said that the rates had gone up, and maybe I got in here late because there was some people here in the police department, but the rate itself for just the general coverage for the police department did not increase then?
On the workers' compensation?
No, just overall, excluding the workers' compensation.
I think what he's referring to, I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's
If as we were talking, she started talking about like the general rates for things had started to increase because of civil unrest and because of the large storm in Iowa and other things like that, Bert. So it wasn't specific to police departments, but the civil unrest itself. I think that's when you came in.
Okay,
And that is when I was talking about it in those terms, I was referring to property rates. So damage to buildings, damage to mostly to buildings and property, physical property.
Okay, got it. Like I said, my only concern was if the rate had gone up, if there was something we could do to lessen that or reduce it. That was what my concern was. And I apologize for jumping in here late and having an audio problem, but thank you, Monica.
Yeah, no problem. I'm happy to answer any questions. So thanks for that explanation too, Tammy. That was helpful. Okay, so as far as what we are recommending on the cyber, I wanted to give you options, but I didn't want to overwhelm you with lots of options. So what I did is kind of honed in on a couple, understanding that what you currently have is through EMC with your package. And if we want to get to the dollar numbers, that's $590 annually. If we were to go with one of the recommendations that I'm making, we would take off that 590. So these numbers, just keep that in mind, that it wouldn't be an additional, and I'll try to remember to do that math as I'm going through it. So the first option that I provided is on page 16 of that summary. The company is called At Bay Insurance. The two areas that I highlighted on the other one, first of all, EMC, your total policy limit was 50,000. This is 1 million. So significant improvement there. And then those two areas that I spoke to directly, the cyber extortion and the social engineering. The cyber extortion has the $1 million limit. So a huge, huge increase there. And then the social engineering goes up to 250. That's kind of the max of what we're seeing companies offer. And that goes back to, I'm sorry, it was either Peggy or Tammy's comment about the controls you have in place. And having those controls in place is what enables you to get to the 250 limit. If we wanted to look at $1 million limit there, we could provide some additional information and look at some other areas. But for this option, the estimated premium is $2,000. Again, remember to subtract that 590 would for the actual dollars. And then the deductible on this is $5,000. Your current deductible is 1,000. So it would be a difference on the deductible. However, the increased limit, and like I referenced those limits for what we're seeing on ransom type claims, that's why I would recommend the higher limit there. But that does have a $5,000 deductible with it. Okay, and then on page 17 is the cyber liability option with BCS Insurance Company. This one is $3,600 annually. These are annual numbers. Again, there's a $1 million limit. The cyber extortion is the $1 million limit. They use the word cyber deception. So if you look down about 3/4 of the way of the page, cyber deception is the social engineering term that they use, and that is $250,000 with a $10,000 deductible specific to that coverage. All the other coverages are listed there, and the deductible on that is $2,500. Are there any questions?
I have two.
Okay.
Peggy. Does the policy apply to, and I'm just kind of questioning here, does it apply if it is an employee or a non-malicious person who makes an accident and then it opens it up to a risk? Or is it just from outside sources? Like somebody makes an error by allowing this to happen, not knowing, and then we are subject to some sort of ransomware. Would that be covered, or is it just
Yes.
when? Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's actually where we see most of the claims coming from is employee error. We do have training that we can provide to you for the employees of the village. Most often it's an email, it's some kind of link or something on a website that an employee clicks on. And that's how the malware or the software, gets in there. And so, yes, that is provided in the coverage.
So
Okay.
then follow up here for that, would that fall under a cyber deception, or would that be more of a cyber extortion if somebody put in ransomware through an email means?
Well, the good news is for the limit, it would be the same. And so you and I don't have to decide which one it is. When the forensic team gets involved, they can work with the insurance company on where they want it to fall or where they think it should fall, if it's the malware or the extortion. I mean, every claim is different and the scenarios can run the gamut. So by having the same limit on those, the insurance company will decide where it would fall.
I guess my question is it seemed to me like the second policy has more options or more things that it's covering, but those aren't as concerning to you as the first two, which the first policy seemed to have in it and was less expensive, obviously. So then I guess I'm kind of throwing this to Drake and Lynn too. Which one were you more comfortable with?
Typically we would defer, we would ask Monica for her recommendation, as the cost between these two is about $1,500, so it's not a huge amount. So we would ask Monica which one provides the most value to the village in terms of the premium costs, and as well as for the coverages that we are receiving for that.
And one thing that I would point to is what's your comfort level with a deductible? In both cases, you're going to get services from the carrier. And that's the main thing. If any of you in your own businesses or own experience, when you have a cyber breach, it can be a nightmare. And having an insurance company and forensics and attorneys on your side and working with you, and both of the companies do have that service. I'm very comfortable with both of them. And so the question would be more on the deductible, if you would rather have the lower deductible with the 2,500, or if you're comfortable with the 5,000. Also knowing that the deductibles are a little different when it comes to the social engineering, because the at-bay keeps you at 5,000, and the other one brings you up to 10.
That's
So
10.
but it's a great question. And as far as the companies, I'm confident and comfortable recommending either of them or both of them. And I think that BCS, you are getting some additional things if you're comfortable with the additional costs there. But I wanted to provide both of those options to you.
Which gets me back to my question. I mean, the second option, the higher cost option, has more things that it covers, but it also looks like it has, like you said, a much higher deductible for one of your bigger concerns, in addition to a higher upfront cost. So I guess I was trying to ask Drake and Lynn, were they worried about, so does that first company then not provide like fishing and different things like that, what that's mentioned in the second one?
So it does provide coverage for those, but they wouldn't be sub-limited. So if they're not listed, then they would be in the $1 million limit. And some of them are just more clearly defined. Again, with cyber companies and cyber insurance policies, there's not a standard form that they all use exactly the same language, like you might see on an auto policy, for example. Each cyber company uses their own terminology, and so sometimes there are some nuances because of that.
Okay, that makes more sense.
So as far as action tonight, if the board desires it, our normal insurances outside of the cyber, we're currently covered with. So if we wanted to add one of the recommended cyber liability insurance coverage, it would be a motion to approve either the addition of the BCS insurance company cyber liability package, or the at-bay cyber liability package. That would be the motion that we would require. So if it sounds like from Monica that she is comfortable with either one as a policy to protect the village. So the lower cost one is at bay, correct?
Yes, at bay.
This is Roger. I guess the thing that kind of concerns me is on the cyber deception on BCS at $10,000 deductible. I guess that kind of concerns me a little bit. Although we do have 5,000 on at bay regular deductible, but the premium is only $2,000. Maybe we'd never use it, the cyber deception, but in the case we did, it'd be another $10,000 we'd have to come up with.
Right.
So that's my only thought.
So go ahead, Michael.
I just have to ask, without going into any details here, Drake or Lynn, can you assure us that you have policies and procedures in place that would greatly deter or prevent any sort of cyber detection or phishing, or what is it technically called now? Cyber extortion here from the village?
We have some policies in place to ensure wire transfers and payments are going to the correct place. We are limited in number of staff, and so the internal controls are not as strong as they would be in a larger organization with more individuals approving things. So there are controls in place. There's nothing that can eliminate completely human error, though.
This is Peggy. I have a question for you. Do we, before we can get approved for this insurance, do we have to, do you require a cybersecurity assessment that we have to have before we can have this insurance policy?
No, no. It's a great question. And it sounds like you might have had some experience with this because yes, in the past, that was part of the process. Cyber insurance is evolving. I think you were even the one who mentioned that before. And they have a different way of underwriting where they don't need quite as much of an assessment as they did in the past.
And there is one thing I would point out. So I think we've trained pretty well on identifying spoofed email addresses. Someone who is pretending to be either myself, Roger, or someone else in the village who an outsider assumes has access to the village's finances. But there have been cases in municipalities, and if you remember a few months ago, I sent out a warning email that there was a municipality that was actually hacked. And so the emails that were coming from them appeared to be coming and were in fact coming from the official email addresses of that municipality. So there is always a chance if there were the security of the system was compromised somehow, and for example, accessed my email and sent a request to an employee to make a financial transaction. It would appear that it's coming from me. Now, obviously, we train employees to look out for other indications that an email is not, it is a malicious email in, checking for spelling errors, checking for asking you to rush to complete the transaction, telling you not to call them because they're in a meeting, things of that nature. So we do train on those things, but they have become more sophisticated in their attempts to deceive employees.
Yes.
And so that is one of the reasons I think that insurance companies are starting to recommend additional coverages as the attacks become more sophisticated and malicious. So we'll continue to train to avoid ever having to make a claim. But as I said, there is always the possibility of human error or, falling for a well executed trick.
So this is Peggy again. Does this insurance cover the departments or just the village? Like, for example, the police department, would they be covered as well if there's some sort of compromised data that's, even though it's not be financial data, it may be, very, very discrete data that has been shared or stolen, or are we just covering the village here?
We are covering the village, but if the police department is part of the village, is your police department a separate entity?
Yeah, it would cover any department of the village.
Yeah, so yes.
So police department, library, the utility would be covered as well. Administration, so that's all village.
Okay.
Monica, Mike here. I have a question, and I'm just wondering if maybe I misinterpreted something here, but for the at-bay option, estimated premium of $2,000, you mentioned minus $590?
Yes, because it would replace the cyber insurance you have through EMC. So we would remove the coverage from the EMC policy, which is $590, and we would replace it with this.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So the net increase would be around $1,400.
Right.
So this is Tammy, and I would like to make a motion that we go ahead and replace our current cyber insurance with the at-bay insurance as Monica is suggesting.
And Michael Bell would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Monica, for a very nice explanation.
Yes. Yes, thank you for having me, and we will be in touch with you, Lynn, directly to make that change.
Sounds good. Thank you, Monica.
Okay, you all have a good evening. I'll sign off if there aren't any other questions for me.
I don't know if this will pertain to Monica or to Lynn, but is there an increase in premium from this year, from last year to what's coming up?
So your policy renewal date is January 1st. And yes, there was an increase from 2020 to 2021.
And that was part of the budget. I mean, that's in the
Okay.
2021 budget.
Okay, Lynn, thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll just have to add this 1,400 at this point.
Okay, okay,
Thank you, Monica.
okay.
Okay, thank you
Bye,
all.
Monica.
Have a good night. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, item 6, President's Report. Just a reminder that the next board meeting we're gonna hold on Wednesday, February 17th, because of the spring primary on Tuesday, the 16th. So we'll be meeting at 7 o'clock like normal, just a day later. Okay?
Thank
Any
you.
further business?
Hey, Roger, could I say something really quick?
Sure.
Hey, I just wanted to extend an invitation to everybody on the board. Tomorrow night at 6 o'clock and to 8 o'clock, we're having our grand open ribbon cutting. But Drake had sent out for my request that if any of the village board members, committee members, anybody like that would like to come in ahead of time in a smaller group or individually at 5 o'clock, we would be willing to host you at that point in time and get you in to show you the police department. But again, the ribbon cutting tomorrow at 6 o'clock with the ladies from the chamber here and Sue Moen. So we're looking forward to it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. Any further business? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
Good night,
Good night.
everyone.